Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we give you the first look at results from the 2018 Insurance Digital Experience Study. Due to the number of people we have on the line, audience members will be muted for the duration of this webcast. We do, however, encourage you to ask questions. You can do this by submitting them through the questions option in your toolbar. We will field questions at the end of the presentation, and any we are not able to get to live will be addressed offline. Everyone in attendance today will receive a copy of the slides presented by close of business tomorrow. I would now like to introduce our speakers for today. First, we have Tom Super, Director of our Insurance Practice here at J.D. Power, and we are pleased to also have Jared Stevenson, Business Development Manager at Centric Digital, joining us today. I'll now go ahead and turn things over to Tom to begin our presentation. Tom?
Great. Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Again, my name is Tom Super. I am Director of the Property and Casualty Practice at J.D. Power. We are extremely excited to have you here today and to share with you the results of our 2018 Insurance Digital Experience Study. This year's study has been dramatically expanded and redesigned to provide a thorough assessment of the trends that are happening in the insurance industry, as well as the brand's overall digital performance, beyond just website performance, but a true look at their overall digital footprint and how they are performing relative to others in the market. So as part of this redesign, we partnered with a top digital consulting firm that many of you may have heard of by the name of Centric Digital to really bring together what we believe is really the most comprehensive and comprehensive assessment of both digital trends as well as carrier performance within the market today. So today we're going to be talking through 5 different topics in terms of our agenda today. The first is to highlight the partnership that I alluded to, really bringing together J.D. Power's best-in-class voice of the customer experience partnered with Centric digital capabilities. Secondly, we're going to be looking at what's new in this year's study. We're excited by many of the new capabilities that we brought to this year's study, including the expanded scope. Last year was just included on auto. This year it is auto and home. And also new capabilities around new channels is another example, including app and social media. So there's a lot that's going to be introduced, and we'll walk you through that as well. And then Jared Stevenson from Centric Digital will be walking us through a first look at some of the trends and findings from this year's study, and we'll be going through the details there. And then we'll also spend some time, as Carolyn alluded to at the top of the call, in terms of what's next, and spend some time around Q&A. So before we get into the results, we wanted to take a little moment and time to look at the state of the market and really how it's having an impact on digital performance. If you look to the right, or to the left rather, you see that the year-over-year trends with customer satisfaction has been on a downward trajectory. Consumer expectations are really rising across the industry overall. And this is ironic because this is at the same time that while many insurers are making significant investments into their overall customer experience, we're seeing at the same time these year-over-year declines. And what we're finding is highlighted on the chart on the right is that many of these factors are being driven by a lower satisfaction in terms of their overall digital expectations. Digital expectations are not being really met by consumers, and we feel like insurers have a lot to do in terms of playing catch-up in that regard to be able to really improve their rankings overall. So we believe that this is being driven by a number of factors. One of the prevalent factors is that consumers are not only benchmarking their digital performance against other carriers in the space, but also looking outside the insurance industry and saying, you know, if Amazon or Netflix can do it, why can't my insurance company? So as a result of this, it's placing tremendous pressure on carriers to really step up their digital performance And I think what we're seeing as a result is really an acceleration in terms of digital expectation and performance. What may have been best practice just a couple years ago are now becoming almost table stakes as new capabilities are coming to market. So to really, as we turn to the next slide, to really, get into, the heart of this change, we wanted to bring together, it's really two capabilities. First is the J.D. Power voice of the customer. What is the customer experience, specifically around two activities related to digital? First is shopping experience, ability to get quotes, be able to consider those quotes, and also buying policies online. And also then the second component, which is servicing, being able to maintain and make changes to your policy. So we're getting the voice of the customer from that experience combined with the centric digital, what we call digital scan performance, where they look at best practices, not only within the insurance industry itself, but also outside the insurance industry. What are some of the sort of innovators in the digital space across a number of different capabilities, and then evaluating how insurance carriers are performing in that regard. So we're really bringing together both of those perspectives as part of this analysis to look at both the customer experience as well as benchmarks in terms of digital best practices in the market today. On the next slide, we're going to be looking at and talking to the methodology that we've deployed. As I talked to, we have the traditional J.D. Power voice of the customer component, looking at both service as well as shopping. On the service component, we surveyed over 4,500 consumers. And on the shopping side, we involved over 6,700 consumers. So it was a very comprehensive survey that got feedback from a number of consumers and their interactions with brands on the both servicing as well as shopping side. On the centric digital side, I'll hand it off to Jared to talk a little bit about what their methodology is and provide you a little insight into how they do their dimension scan.
Thanks, Tom, and hi everyone. Again, my name is Jared Stevenson. I'll just quickly brief you on how Centric Digital measured our portion of the IDES study. So Centric Digital is a leading digital transformation partner, and we've established an objective framework of 3,500 best practices, which is called Dimensions, which is what you see here. These best practices are granular and objective. They've been established by industry experts, subject matter experts, and they are consistently curated and primarily industry agnostic. So these are the kind of things that Tom was alluding to earlier. They're transformative technologies that initially are on the horizon, and they move towards being table stakes. As those happen, we capture them in our best practice framework, and we analyze them and then roll them up into a dimension score. Sometimes we call it like a FICO score of digital. These best practices are categorized into 6 key dimensions, which are experience, channels, products, platforms, processes, and people. And I'll do a call out here that channels refers to digital channels and not the traditional insurer channels that would be either an agent or direct. These are digital channels like social, website, things like that. So this methodology allows us to compare the digital proficiency of organizations both to each other and then across industries, and also lets us compare industries to industries, because again, a majority of those best practices are industry agnostic. However, for studies like this, we supplement the industry agnostic best practices with industry specific. So you'll see a couple of subcategories called out called digital insurance. For this study, we pulled out digital insurance best practices and also best practices related to the kind of 5 key categories that are in the J.D. Power framework. And that way we're able to really merge these two. So I don't want to get too deep into dimensions here, and I'll turn it back over to Tom because I can go on for quite some time.
Great. Thank you, Jared. So as we turn to the next slide, we wanted to highlight some of the new findings and new insights that have emerged from this study, new really takeaways that you'll be able to get as part of this study. First is improved shopping and voice of the customer analysis. We've expanded, as I talked about, personal lines to include both auto and home for both shopping as well as servicing. We have a new index model with over 5 new measures that have been added to this year's study. We've expanded our digital channels, mobile app, and some other capabilities as well. And we have a new rating system of digital channels, including social media. So there's been a lot from the voice of the customer perspective that will be added. And then, as Jared alluded to, expert evaluation and the centric digital dimension side. We're going to also be looking at high-level trends impacting the insurance industry, some of the trends related to personalization, InsurTech, and other insights. And then we'll also look at specific examples on where the industry is doing well across different digital touch points, looking within the industry for best practices, as well as best in class outside the insurance industry, to look at how you can really bring up your performance to be on par with what's happening in the market. And then obviously we have specific company level recommendations on how they're performing relative to benchmarks and opportunities for improvement. As part of our study, we evaluated about 19 brands as part of our study. These are all the large brands that have customer-facing interaction with consumers, and they were part of the scope in this year's study. So as we look at the next slide, I'm going to be handing it off to Jared, back to Jared, to run through the results of this year's study. And we're really excited for him to highlight some of the insights that have emerged. So with that, I'll hand it back off to Jared.
All right, thanks, Tom. So yeah, I'm going to take you guys on a high-level walkthrough of the detailed results, first of all the scores, and then I'm going to walk you through one of the key takeaways. Because I think it's really important to show what this report gets you. It doesn't just get you a data dump, it gets you a pretty high-level strategic analysis and recommendations tailored to your company and to the industry about what we're going to do. So I'll also trust Tom and Carolyn to slow me down if I'm going too fast or being a little too dense, as I tend to do. Anyway, so here is the high-level industry results. First page. On the left, you've got the J.D. Power Voice of the Customer research results. In blue, you have service, and in green, you have shopping. Now, it's important to take away two things from this. One, that these are different sets of people, right? Only customers, only people who actually were enrolled at insurance companies are in the blue bars, and the green charts are consumers at large. So you'll see there's a pretty big gap between those two scores, right? Upwards of 850 for an industry average, and then 779 for shopping. And so this you can kind of have two takeaways from this. One, that customers and shoppers either have different expectations, and the ones that are shopping for your insurance sites are also very comfortable in e-commerce experiences, quoting and enrolling experiences on sites like Amazon. Or two, your experiences for shopping and service aren't meeting the same standards. So maybe you're really supporting that back end, that claims process, but you're not necessarily supporting that front end quoting and enrolling, making that easy, making that customer service on the front end easy. So there's a lot you can take out of that chart, but again, I will remind you they are different customer sets. On the right, you have the centric digital dimension score. Now, this is, again, think of it as a FICO score of digital, right? Based on these digital best practice classifiers. Now, I also want to highlight that this is an absolute score, so this isn't normalized. An average company does not score 500. In fact, an average company scores about 670, 680, because there's a lot of scores that are table stakes, very basic fundamental things that kind of pump up the scores on the low end, but on the back end, but are necessary to rate. So the insurance industry overall is a lagging industry. It is not the most lagging. There are industries that are far behind this, but it is far from the top, especially for such a visible industry. Whenever we see an industry that is so visible in marketing and so visible in common parlance, it's rare to have a score this low. So another cool, interesting takeaway, if you look at this radial tree map we've done from the dimension score, obviously red means worse, green means better. There's no clear area that you guys are underperforming in significantly. It's kind of an across the board need to improve. Although obviously in the subcategory and category levels, the smaller chunks, you can see some real pain points. So if we kick over to the next slide, this is kind of the money slide here, right? These are the ranks, both for shopping, service, and Centric Digital Dimension Score. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I think we could spend all day really digging into what's going on. But kind of the two key takeaways I want you to see is that no one is excellent at everything. Sorry, no one is excellent at everything. Across the top, there's no company that scores in the top two on all things. USAA is excellent in shopping and service, but lower in the dimension score. However, there are some companies that are fairly weak across the board. This chart also highlights the really excellent insights that you can get from having the VOC analysis and the expert analysis compared side by side. Because USAA, and I'm going to call this one out in particular because they are not rank eligible for a J.D. Power study because they have a subset of customers, correct? Only service members and their families are allowed to enroll, which means that we're not entirely sure that the samples can be directly compared. It could be apples to oranges. But USAA has done a great job of building a brand around themselves and really familiarizing and making their customers love them. And that's great. But when we highlight the fact that their dimension score isn't number 1 or number 2, you can still see that there's some opportunities for them to improve. And I think this is a really highlights not only that USAA is doing excellent and that they are in the top quartile of the dimension score, but that they do have some opportunities for improvement. So if we flip to the next slide, our top performer for service is Geico. And again, with the caveat that USAA is not eligible for this because of that customer set. Top performer for service, Geico. They did an excellent job overall. I think this is kind of something we almost expected, but again, this is what customers are saying. So Geico's overall index score was 878, which is significantly above the industry average of 850. And it scored highly in all 5 categories. So there wasn't a category where it really struggled. It's backed by a lot of excellent digital features. They are really good at responsive design. They are kind of pushing the industry limits when it comes to things like chatbots, as I know they're rolling it out in some of their verticals. And they're overall just doing excellent in things like customer service and social. So it's really important to kind of call it that Geico's doing a great job here. On the next slide, the top performer in shopping, Allstate. They had a score of 808, which is well above the industry average of 779. As you saw, shopping scores were pretty low in the original chart, but Allstate was a standout. Navigation on their website is very straightforward. Their information, right-sized information is up front. They keep their really detailed granular information lower but available. And they performed really well in 3 of the 5 tasks. So they do have some ground that they can make up. But overall, Allstate, really excellent job. And this, again, VOC analysis right off the bat. So, you can argue with what you think who does better or what, but this is what customers are saying for an extremely large sample size. So we're going to jump into the next 2 slides here. And I want to spend some time on them because these 2 slides are the real, aside from the rankings, are the real takeaways of this report. This is the analysis that J.D. Power and Centric Digital did combined. And what we tried to do is distill all of the thousands and thousands of data points that we gathered during our collection into 2 high-level takeaways, the 2 things you should take away from this webcast, if anything else. And then those each of them are broken down into 3, so for a total of 6 themes. So key themes that we backed with data that support those key takeaways. And so I want you to really kind of look at these, and what we're going to do, I'm going to explain the structure of the report a little later and do a deep dive into one of these. But I want to walk through each of these individually because this is really what I find interesting and what I find valuable from a strategic standpoint for the insurance industry. So first key takeaway, insurers do not meet digital expectations. So this was the big gaps in the shopping and service scores in the J.D. Power VOC data and the low dimension score kind of show an industry that's looking to embrace digital. You're doing it well in some areas, but you're not quite there. This is a huge problem. It leaves room for disruption, both from the bottom and from the top. And it can cause a lot of issues when these customer expectations are accelerating. Customer expectations, as Tom mentioned on our very first slide, they're increasing and they're not slowing down. As new technologies emerge, you can get not only, it's like a riptide, you can get pulled back and you can be struggling. Right now you might be treading water, but you can soon be struggling to breathe if you do not meet expectations today and set yourself up to meet them tomorrow. So what feeds into, what are the three key themes that feed into this takeaway? First one, personalization. To meet digital expectations in the modern era, you have to personalize your website. Modern customers, they're not expecting to just be at the receiving end of like a mass email blast that has no tailoring, no extra information. They know that all these cookie warnings that you get on the site, all the ads you're receiving, all those terms and agreements you have to sign whenever you download an app. And sure, consumers aren't dumb. They know that those things mean you're gathering data on them. And they're annoyed and they'll download ad blockers and they'll avoid your site if they don't feel like they're getting something in return. So you need to use that data and use that information that you're collecting on them to improve the personalization of your experience. So personalization, when I say that, there's a couple of nuanced ways this is used in the digital industry. But the first way is you want to allow users to choose their own experience when they want to. So this is a customer choice form of personalization. If they want to interact with you over the phone, you got to let them do that. If they want to interact with you on a web chat, you have to let them do that. If they want to email you, you have to let them do that. That's just the reality. That's the first kind, the customer choice. The second half is automatically tailoring your interactions to them. So if they are living in a city like Manhattan or a smaller city, Indianapolis, and they're not going to be living in a large house, going to be living in an apartment, they think you should maybe already know that or already have a suggestion about that. You should already be tailoring your information based on the gathered data and based on some assumptions from geolocation that no, maybe I shouldn't be pitching them insurance on on 5-car garage house or 5 cars, right? They probably have 1 car, maybe 2, maybe they're in an apartment with none, right? Maybe they have a motorcycle. You need to be tailoring that for our personalization experience. And this is critical. That data is valuable. The second, reliable carrier experience. So reliable carrier experience drives satisfaction. And this is something we found from linking these two studies. Satisfaction scores in the VOC customer sat was higher when their digital scores were better. And they weren't as good when the digital scores were lower. That's something we saw. It's hard to say a causal relationship from that, but it is correlated and it is what you would expect. The chart to the left, to the right highlights this. Highlights kind of an issue with reliable carrier experience that the insurance industry has. And I'm going to go deeper into this chart later, but if you can see, this is a subcategory breakdown from the dimension score. And across the bottom, you have things like chatbot, web chat, on-site search, content layout, mobile web experience. Some of these, the industry is doing great as a whole, and some of them doing very poorly. And this means that there's an unstable customer experience happening. And this will cause satisfaction issues. And then to reiterate, data underscores innovative insurers. So, I grew up in Hartford, Connecticut. I know what an actuary is. I know that you insurance companies have incredible skill and understanding of how to manipulate data, how to use data to better your industry, better your own company, and better your customers. But I know that only a few companies are using that institutional, permeated through institution data knowledge to transfer into the digital landscape. You're segmenting those. The actuaries are the actuaries and the data teams, the digital teams are the digital teams. That knowledge is segmented. And that knowledge shouldn't be segmented. You need to leverage that data. Doesn't mean just selling aggregated, packaging it and selling it to, other advertising companies. It does mean that you need to personalize, but also tie all of your information together on the back end. So what I mean when I say that is, if someone calls your call center or contacts an independent agent, does your company ever get that information? Can it? Is that information that's, any information that goes through your social team, is that transferred to your customer service email team? Is that transferred to your call center customer service team? Is that information fed back into sales data? Are you able to respond to kind of customer trends? If you're getting a lot of information about one thing in your email, or you're getting a lot of information about one thing in your social, can you combine those two data sets? And then can you respond to trends that you're seeing? Lots of certain questions, etc. Can you set up to identify them at all? Like, can you see those trends at all? Are your CS teams talking to each other? Is data being used to tailor experiences, as I mentioned in point 1? If you don't have the answers to all of these questions, you've really got to, you've got to up your digital game as an insurer, because I know you guys have the skills. We all do. You guys are smart, fast, but we need to be able to bring that skill to bear on for digital. So if we flip to the next slide, this is the second high-level takeaway and the second set of 3 themes that we identify. So this one is digital drives carrier experience. So it's almost a more focused version of one of the themes I mentioned before, and it's something that we're going to reiterate over and over again because of what Tom mentioned on slide 1. So again, we found a positive correlation between CSAT scores, customer satisfaction, VOC scores, and digital scores. So utilizing digital efficiently will drive customer satisfaction, and it will improve your business outcomes. That's a reality that we've discovered from this report. And these 3 key themes are what support that. So the first one, digital scope remains narrow. And to explain this, I'm going to highlight this density chart that we have on the right side. So on the right side, you'll see these are the insurance companies mapped out in each of these categories. So all 19 are mapped out in each of these density humps here. And so on the far right, you'll see user interface design is green. So this means that you guys up front, your public-facing websites, those landing pages, those basic interface designs are really good. Actually, this is a tremendously high score. This is one of the highest we've seen for an industry overall. Normally, normally the density curves are not so tight. They're much more spread out, larger standard deviations. The content design, that's the stuff that's actually being delivered on those user interfaces, is a little bit lower. You've got interesting articles, you've got the information there, but either it's not getting to people or it's not quite up to snuff. And then finally, on the back end in this red chart, lower overall score, lower frequency, is the digital insurance features. So these are things like digitizing your quoting and enrolling process, providing access to modern chatbots, digitizing your claims process, allowing people to process claims both on their mobile phone and on their website. So those features are lacking pretty significantly. You can see on that long tail, there are some companies that are barely doing them at all. And what this means is that although you've got that really great digital up front, seems like you're doing great, on the back end, it's very narrow. There's not that breadth, that huge foundation that's supporting all that. And then, so that's the first key theme. The second, insurance exhibits an inconsistent footprint. I'm going to leave this one for now because I'm going to talk a little bit more to it in the following slides. But it is very important, which is why I'm highlighting. And then finally, something I mentioned, I've alluded to a couple of times, digital is an avenue to business success. So you will be disrupted if you don't get digital. If you're not a proficient digital company, you will be disrupted. And I'm not just talking about some small fry disruption from a guy, a Y Combinator backed startup, right? Talking about what happens when those guys do well, but also what happens when a company like Amazon decides it's time to get into the insurance game, or something a little more close to the horizon, CVS, Walmart. What happens when one of these companies starts to say, all right, it's my time to take insurance. I'm going to use my data knowledge, my data skills, my digital skills to show up in this game and just start throwing my weight around. So if you don't pay attention if you're not paying attention to digital, you will be disrupted. We found that companies that are industry leaders in market share are spending big on digital. Those of you on the call who are part of those companies probably know who you are, because you understand that it's critical to be good at digital. Actually, at a recent JD Power event, the Insurance Advisor Conference, which maybe some of you attended, we had a UCLA lecturer from Anderson, their business school, highlight the fact that 20% of auto insurance customers switch insurance every year. You guys probably have better stats on your churn rates than I do, but that's as an industry overall. I mean, that's the reality that 20% of your customers in auto insurance every year are considering, oh, maybe I should switch. And if they're going to get a better experience somewhere else, that's going to happen. It's going to eat up your profits and your business acumen quickly. So it's really critical to pay attention to digital here. We have some data to support that. So on the next slide, I'm going to pause here for just a second and kind of take a break from the data dump and explain to you kind of how this report is structured. So this is one of those 6 key themes that I highlighted earlier. I'm going to drill down into it now. But the report is structured in the following way. You have an introduction. Obviously, we have an executive summary, which produces those high-level results that I showed you earlier, gives you a little bit of a detailed breakdown, a little bit more information on our processes. Then we highlight those 6. Then we highlight those 6 key themes with those 2 overarching takeaways. And then the remainder of the report is in 2 sections. The first section being each of those 6 key themes has a whole section dedicated to it. And in this section, you're going to find 6 pages. There's going to be a high-level supporting theme that gives you a little bit of background, contextualization. Hold on a second, I'm going to pause. It's Fifth Avenue in Manhattan behind me. Sorry about that. It's just to prove we're not doing it live. Actually, it's to prove we are doing it live and not recording. So anyway, so there are 6 pages that each of these themes are going to be supported with. First is a high-level contextualization with the data insight. The second is going to be the key data insight that we're talking about with supporting information, explaining it thoroughly. Third is going to be a best practice slide, best practice page that details what we would say, okay, so you know you're bad at this, what does being good at this look like? Then there's going to be an industry level recommendation, how we suggest you can start fixing this issue or attacking this issue. Then there's going to be a company level recommendation. So anyone who subscribes to the IDES study is going to get a specific slide in each of these themes, a specific recommendation with what they should do to work on that theme and to improve their overall digital acumen. It's going to be supported by screenshots and information from our analysts here at Centric Digital and analysts with JD Power. And then finally, you're going to get examples of standouts both in the industry and outside the industry in that particular theme. So you're going to be able to see, okay, who should I look to do well? Because one key thing about digital is that you need to make sure that you're not just looking at your competitors, you should be looking across the industry, you should be looking at the digital leaders who are really transforming and living up to their expectations. Doesn't matter how good you are at candle making, how good your other candle makers are doing if someone is selling light bulbs. And then the final portion of the report is a large data dump. All sorts of great insights, breakdowns from the Centric Digital and the VOC. Centric Digital information will be broken down into subcategories and categories, each specifically in each of those 6 dimensions of digital. It's great. You'll be able to see exactly where you're doing strongly, where you're doing poorly. So you won't just have a high-level radial tree map, you'll have individual numerical scores. So I'm going to talk now, Tom's going to highlight, I'm going to talk now to this theme. So I'm going to walk you through 5 of those 6 slides because we don't have a company-specific slide here because we didn't want to call anybody out. So the first slide here is the high-level theme slide. So again, this theme is looking for experience. So your insurers are exhibiting an inconsistent footprint. And to remedy that, you need to design for experience. This is something that JD Power always hammers and Centric Digital backs up. Experience should be the first thing you think about, especially in the modern world. And so what I mean to say here is that 39%, this is a JD Power VOC data point, 39% of shoppers did not have access to web chat during their quoting and enrolling process. So that means that your customer was looking to quote, was looking to enroll, looking to sign up, maybe had a few questions, they couldn't find web chat. I don't know if any of you have bought a car recently, but every local car dealership, I would estimate that about 60 or 70% of your mom and pop car dealerships, much more if they are part of a larger dealer network, will have web chat on their website. HubSpot, the CRM tool, provides it as a free service that you can just activate. So there's no reason that a large company shouldn't have web chat by this point. Maybe when it was a brand new, transformative technology, yes, but you've had enough time to operationalize that, understand how cheaply you can do it, drive calls away from your call centers, which could be costing you many, many dollars per call, and you handling them on web chat inside the experience. It's controllable, it's more effective. So 39% of customers didn't have that at all. That's a huge experience miss. So on the right side, this chart here, this kind of highlights the fact that this is not a millennial thing. Interestingly, on both smartphone and desktop, there were lower scores for pre-boomers, boomers, and Gen X. Actually, a lot of times millennials are comfortable using data technology, comfortable finding those workarounds. So when you have breaks in your experience, sometimes millennials are able to overcome them. And they're like, all right, fine, I know that most companies suck at this. I'm just going to manage it. Whereas a boomer or a pre-boomer, they might really struggle with that, and so they might get frustrated. You need to understand your customer set and design for experience across them. Otherwise, companies like Lemonade, Policy Genius are going to overtake you. So design for experience first. If we move to the next slide, this is that key thing. So when I say that insurers exhibited an inconsistent digital footprint, that key theme, what I mean to say is this chart you're familiar with, you have a scattered experience. Your experience scores are all over the place. Now, there's an old business axiom that everyone here has heard 100 times, right? Under promise, over produce. And that's kind of what we mean here from a data fact. I don't want to lead too heavily on cliches, but sometimes having really great experiences in one area and terrible experiences others is worse than having a generally good experience across the board. So you say I'm a customer that I'm a customer or a shopper. I log into your mobile website. I'm on the train, or I'm sitting on the side of a soccer game watching my kids, and I log into your mobile website just thinking about insurance, whatever, like, oh, I've got bills coming in. I need to see if there's going to be anything cheaper, better out there. You have a great mobile web experience. That person says, awesome, really cool. I like that. They go home, they sit down at the computer, or they go to work in the next morning and they're slacking off a little bit. They decide to do some personal stuff. They sit down at their computer. They can't find a chat feature to ask questions once they get into the scrolling and rolling experience. Maybe the on-site customer service is not good. They search for the thing that they found on the mobile web yesterday on their on-site search. They can't find it. Maybe they download an app after they're a customer and suddenly there's a lot of missing capabilities. That's bad. That's going to make them like you less. That's going to make those 20% that are auto company, that are looking to renew their auto thing every year, they're going to look to other companies. So having a scattered experience is bad. And the huge range, I mean, look at this, web chat below 250 score, mobile web nearly hitting 700 as an industry. This isn't even like one particular company. This massive gap is causing a lot of issues. So this is also going to allow companies to undercut you. That's how Lemonade focuses so heavily on chatbot that they're just able to, and then they have a great chatbot and then an average experience across the rest of the board. They don't have the really great stuff that you guys have, that acumen, that knowledge, but they're doing a great job in that one thing, and they're backing up across the board with consistent experience. So if we switch over to the next slide, this is the best practice. So, we've walked through the trend, the context, we've walked through the data specifically. Now we're going to talk about the best practice, consistency and expectations. This is what I've said over and over again. And if you want a business case for this, 29% of shoppers did not recognize the policy value proposition during the quoting and enrolling experience. Now that's huge, right? That's huge. So you have driven your customers to a shopping experience with great social media, maybe great outbound marketing, maybe that guy who was sitting on the end, sitting on the soccer field, flipping through your mobile web app. They've gotten on your excellent landing page. They've entered your quoting and enrolling experience, and then that's not up to snuff, so they don't recognize the value prop, and they say, "Oh, this is not going to be cheaper," even though there was a sale for them. It doesn't matter if it's there. If they don't see it, which they're telling us, this is customers telling us they don't see it, then they're not going to get it. That's 30% of the people that you might lose, right? I'm sure your sales ops teams would be like shocked at that number. So you can lose that attrition rate. So not only do they not see it, but maybe you didn't have a web chat or a chatbot to call out when they're like, oh, do I get any sales? Do I get any deals here? What's better for me? You don't have a guy quickly on call. They're going to have to make a phone call or send an email. How do the customers find it? How do you make up for that missed experience? So that's the best practice. You need to have that consistency and expectations. So flip to the next slide here. So this is how we do an industry recommendation. You need to create a seamless omnichannel experience. And so this is contextualizing it. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but I want to say again that when I say omnichannel, I mean digital channels, not simply agents and not simply direct consumer, not simply agents. I mean all the channels: social, website, mobile platforms. I will call out that agents should be included in as one of those digital channels. Those agents should be integrated into an omni-channel experience. If an agent says a particular quote to someone, is that coming, and they're going to, and are you getting the aggregate level data that all these agents are saying are quoting at this particular rate, so you can adjust your rates, or you can back them up with better marketing materials, certain things that call out that maybe those agents would be like, oh, wow, that would be great if X could happen. All those things being automatically supported by your digital experience. So if we flip to the next slide, there's a missing slide here, because in between that slide and this slide would be your company-specific report. So some of you might be sitting here saying, I have a great omni-channel experience. I have already done all those things, Jared, that you've been talking about. I don't really care. Why do I want this report? Well, what we do is we look at your company and we say, if you're doing great in this theme, we'll call that out. We'll be like, you're doing great in this theme. Keep it up. Here are some things that maybe you should think about that are on the horizon. If you're doing poorly in this theme, we'll support with screenshots where you're failing, how you can start to think about customizing your digital strategy to meet that. So you'll have that slide, which is not here, but will be there. And then finally, you'll get this slide that calls out an in-industry leader and an outside of the industry leader. Now, so for our State Farm folks in the line, calling you out because you're doing a great job. You have, at the basic level, really obviously started to think about your omni-channel experience. You can see that customers can begin to establish a quote on one channel, save the form at any time, and resume later on a different channel. Mobile, web, that's awesome. That's so great. I'm sitting on the train, filling out, and then I'm like, oh crap, I lost my connection. I'll fill it out when I get home. If I log in, if I go home, I log back onto the website, and it's got my information saved. I'm halfway through the quoting and enrolling experience. That's great. I can say from personal anecdote that a number of times if I've had to restart my quoting and enrolling or my sales experience at one point, I've just said, screw it, I'm not going to do it. And then agent support via State Farm's extensive network promoted as a further option for help if needed throughout the quoting and enrolling experience. So they're, again, marrying that classic agent channel with their modern direct-to-consumer channel. They're supporting it, and they also oftentimes give information about the agent. So here's one in your area. They know from geolocation what you're doing. And then the best-in-class omni-channel is Starbucks. Starbucks is great when it comes, the app uses of Starbucks, the statistics are absolutely incredible. It's something like 3 times a day or some absurd number like that. Hopefully that siren isn't overpowering me here. But not only do they work in that app, but then you show up in person, you get your coffee. It's so seamless now that many of you probably use it and you don't think about what a great omni-channel experience it was, but when it was first introduced by Starbucks, it was like revolutionary. I can order on my app, I can order at home, and I can walk into the store, a guy hands my coffee, and I walk out without paying. That's excellent. So this is the kind of thing that you'll see. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see that that's one of the 6 themes. I walked you through it, and it was missing a little bit of information, that company-specific thing. So you'll get 5 more of those, a whole suite of data on the back end. So I hope I didn't bore you to tears with that, but I think it was really valuable, and I think that's the sort of insight that we're able to provide from this mixture of expert analysis and VOC. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tom and get a drink of water while he kind of details what your next steps are.
Great. Thank you, Jared. I thought that was very good. Yeah, great discussion. Now we can get a sense for the types of insights that you would get in the study, really the redesigned impact of bringing together the traditional insights that you get from studies in years past around the voice of the customer across key touch points in the customer experience around shopping and servicing of a policy, combined with many of the insights that Jared just walked us through around digital best practices that help stretch our thinking across the industry around moving up to best practices. So a lot of exciting insights. And again, thank you, Jared, for walking through that. We want to spend a little time here talking about what you would get in terms of getting the study. So obviously, subscribers get access to this information and much more. analyst briefing, robust information around what we're seeing from digital trends perspective. What we walked you through today is just a small sample of the overall analysis. Jared had alluded to the other tracks that we've looked at. Beyond that, we're also combining that with J.D. Power related voice of the customer insights. So there is a robust set of materials that you would get as part of this study. The second aspect would be an on-site delivery and consultation that would be joint between J.D. Power and Centric Digital. One of the things that we've been committed to is providing a higher level of partnership with many of our carriers. I know that for some of you on the line, this won't come as a surprise, having interacted with us over the last 6 months or year, about our commitment to really step up around providing the why behind the results, what's happening, and really partnering with you to develop customized solutions to really close the gap to top performers. So that will be something that you would get as part of that. Third is obviously company-specific recommendations supported by screenshots. So we have information you can actually go in there and kind of touch and feel and see where some of the competitors at and where there's opportunities for improvement. You would also get access to the Voice of Consumer Comprehensive File. You would have access to our Vox platform to look at information and be able to manipulate the data in a way that best serves your need. And then you would also get an insight in terms of the Centric Digital proprietary scan tool that they highlighted earlier, and really your overall performance against what is happening in the industry. So as we turn to the next slide, J.D. Power has made a real concerted effort, as I alluded to, around enhancing our partnership with many of our clients. Really around trying to better solve problems as we're getting a lot more insight into consumers and getting more on the trend that's happening within the insurance market. We really are making concerted effort to make sure that we're helping you, create solutions to some of the issues that are being identified in our analysis. So, part of our partnership with Centric Digital is really to provide that higher touch experience to our clients. So it's not just, here's the information, good luck in trying to close the gap. It really is being a partner in providing the why behind this insight, and customizing the solution. So while there are things that might be digital best practices, there may be cases that may not apply to your specific organization. Carriers that rely on independent agents have different challenges than those that have captives or exclusive agents as their primary channel, for example. So as part of this, comprehensive digital experience benchmarking, ongoing monitoring of digital customer experience. This is something that is part of our commitment to provide enhanced partnership with you. And then the third dimension, which we're really excited about, is launching certification programs. This is something where you can highlight being really best in class around certain capabilities around your digital components. We can certify you based on being a top provider on certain channels, specifically around mobile, website, and contact center. We've had some experience outside of the insurance industry with moving forward with these certifications. Bank of America might be one that you're familiar with. They have been certified by J.D. Power and have used that as a marketing tool to really highlight how they're really a top performer in the mobile and mobile app category among consumers. So these are different ways that we can help you as part of our commitment in terms of providing insight that is helpful to your organization. So with that, we'll turn to the next slide and turn it over for any questions that you may have. We have probably about a couple minutes remaining here. So if there are any questions that you have, there's a chat feature on the right side of your screen, and you can feel free to load that question in, and we'll do our best to get through these questions. And if we're not able to get to all of them, then we'll be sure to circle back with you after today's webinar to answer your question. So with that, I do see one come through here. There's a question, and maybe Jared, you can might be able to help me here as I'm reading through this. Said that insurance industry is lagging to other industries. Can you provide examples or an example of other industry scores and why insurance is lagging? So that's probably a question best answered by you, Jared, if you want to take a crack at that.
Yeah, sure, Tom. I didn't go into too much detail there. I can't exactly, explaining why the insurance industry is lagging is, the whole kind of purpose of the report and something I've walked through. But I will say that some other industries that we've scored, that Centric Digital has scored in the past, for example, industries that are higher scoring than insurance are things retail. So retail has a very high, so it's the highest scoring industry that we've found. It's 800 plus. Large major banks, so major banks like including the Big Four and other large international banks generally score very highly in digital because they're spending a ton of money there. I know for a fact, actually, Bank of America, I know the JD Power and the Centric Digital team worked with them, and they have a digital team that's nearly 1,000 people. They have almost 500 people working on their app alone. Obviously, not every company can compete with that, but that's the sort of investment they're making. Industries that score lower than the insurance industry would be something, the utilities industry. We recently did a large report there. The utility industry score is lower, and they also have a pretty huge range of scores. That was the biggest thing we saw from there. Some companies scored as low as like 390, some as high as 700, but overall their score was lower. Also, manufacturers tend to have very low digital scores, even though in B2B, digital is very important. Manufacturers have not highlighted that as clearly. So that's a couple of examples. I can do more if people reach out afterwards.
Okay, great. So good. We're seeing a couple of questions filter in here. So another one, interesting one about chatbots. So the question is here, how have you seen chatbots be deployed successfully across the industry? What are some best practices regarding chatbots? So it's a detailed question, but I don't know, Jared, did you want to take that one as well?
Yeah, sure. Implementation of chatbots. Yeah, as I alluded to earlier, it's something that's kind of top of mind for a lot of people. When I've had meetings with customers in the past, I'm not surprised you got the question, because it's kind of one of those technologies that seemed like has botnet, so it assumes you have to have some incredible AI, some incredible NLP, natural language processing. All that backing to actually make it run at all. But the reality is it's actually becoming simpler, right? And relatively easy. A lot of digital shops, digital agencies can even offer out of the box solutions. What I think is that the best way to kind of go about implementing it, certain companies already are. Again, I mentioned Lemonade. I mentioned Geico. I know is starting to test case it in some of their verticals. But they're starting to roll out across the industry, and soon they're going to basically be, you need to have them or your toast. But the best way to roll them out is, obviously depending on your business objectives, right? You want to do some A/B testing as you kind of start it up in different areas. But the kind of critical thing is you want to start small. Honestly, even if you want to start with, I recommend starting web chat first, and kind of understanding the types of questions you're getting through the chat channel so you can help feed your bot. But if you really want to start with even a Facebook chat bot, right? Facebook offers those very, very, very cheaply, very easily, and customers interacting with them will know there's a limited scope of things it can approach. So kind of test the waters with that, test it in a particular channel, a particular vertical first, and then kind of roll it out across and increase its competency and increase its scope as you go is the way I think. And obviously everything's tied into your business objectives, your operational costs, all that sort of thing. But I think it's something everyone needs to start looking at.
Yeah, that's great. And also, you made reference to Lemonade. InsurTechs are certainly bringing new capabilities to the space. Now, our perspective is, with JD Power, we've done a lot of research around InsurTechs, and I know that this is also part of the study as well. We see them as really adding value to the value chain, right, for insurance. They're really, there's arguments, are they being disruptive to the industry? Do they pose true threats? Or, are they part of, enhancements of what we're doing today? And our perspective is that the majority of them are really providing new capabilities that smart carriers should be looking to partner with and rolling in as almost an extension of their innovation efforts. Lemonade is a good example. They have challenges from the organization. I think the latest report came out that their underwriting, that their profitability has been strained. So they've got some organizational issues to deal with there. But I think that there's, at the same time, there's lessons learned, right, about chatbots and different capabilities that could be leveraged and applied in terms of best practices. So what we try to do as part of this analysis is provide an even look to say, what are some of the best capabilities in the space, even though they may not be threats or innovators or threats per se, but there's innovation that they're doing that we can potentially leverage and use across the industry. So we hope to provide insights in that regard. I think we have time for about one more question. I'm scrolling through here. When are customized company reports available? So I will take that one. That is going to be coming in the next couple weeks. The material, so there's a couple pieces of information. There is the comprehensive analyst summary and analyst report that is available right now on Vox as part of the tool. You also have access to the Vox tool and platform so that you could go in there right now and be able to go in and run your own reports, extract the information, and do company comparison as part of that. Customized company reports will be coming available in the next couple weeks. I think we're targeting by the end of July to have that ready, and we're already have many clients that have enrolled and have scheduled those on-site sessions. I know I have a few coming up in August and even some into September. So those will be coming available quite quickly. So with that, I know we didn't get a chance to get to all the questions here. We're up against our time. Those questions we did not have a chance to answer, we'll be sure to circle back on that. Again, thank you for your time. We're very excited by the enhancements that we've made here in this year's study, and myself or Jared are available for any questions that you may have that we may have not addressed during this session. So once again, thank you for your participation.